Okay. If the other trustees are ready, I will go ahead and gavel us into order. And as is our tradition, we will begin our meeting with a pledge. So if you can silence your phones and repeat the pledge. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is that we need to appoint a temporary clerk for today's meeting. It has been recommended that we appoint Mr. Char Jackson as our temporary clerk. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Trustee Johnson with a Mr. Vice Chairman, this is Trustee Johnson with a motion, if a motion's in order.
Okay. Is there a second?
I have to make it. Sorry, Steve. Let me. I move that we appoint Char Jackson as a temporary clerk of the board for October 14th.
Okay. Thank you.
15th.
Thank you. I'm having a lot of trouble here. So.
I second that, Steve.
Okay, so
I second,
moved by Trustee Johnson and seconded by Trustee Klopfenstein that we appoint Char Jackson as temporary clerk. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So adopted. The next item on the agenda is to nominate a board chairman to replace Chairman Klopfenstein. Do I hear any nominations for our new board chair?
Vice Chair, I would nominate Trustee Newhoff for chairmanship.
Okay. Trustee Newhoff has been nominated. My understanding is we could have a second, but my understanding of Robert's rules is that a second is not required. Are there any other nominations? Although if anyone wants to second that nomination, I would certainly accept it. Okay, we have a nomination. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Vice Chair,
Hearing none.
If you're looking
I'm sorry?
This is Trustee Ozuna. If you're looking for discussion, I just want to state Trustee Newhoff did leave this board for a couple years, and he did a fine job, and I have full confidence that he'll lead us well moving ahead.
Thank you, Trustee Ozuna. Any other discussion? If so, I'll place the motion. If not, I'll place the motion. All those in favor of appointing Trustee Newhoff as our board chairman, please say aye.
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 Aye. I was going to abstain, but
I heard 5 ayes. Any nays or abstentions? Then it is so adopted. With that, Trustee Newhoff, I will virtually pass the gavel to you.
all right. Thank you, Trustee Smiley. Bear with me just a second. I'm having a computer issue trying to pull up the agenda. I think I'm about to have it here, but while we're doing that, do any trustees have any changes or amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, then we'll move on to item C, which is the discussion. And there's one item to determine the operational status while in the red category, and I will ask, I assume some member of the administration is going to speak to this.
Thank you, Chairman Newhoff, trustees. The district administration has spent some time looking at all of the data and opinions and emails we've received. At this time, the district administration recommends that we continue to follow the board-approved reopening plan and language from our decision-making framework for Category 3 Red, which states targeted short-term or extended school closure with remote learning or school buildings open, but option of limited staggered use of school buildings with physical distancing and sanitation. Utilize alternate day schedule. Beginning October 19th, we recommend that all schools, K-12, utilize the alternating day schedule. The district would continue with this operational status until either the board approves a change to the current plan or CDH moves us back into Category 2 yellow. The why behind this recommendation has 7 main bullet points. Number 1, this is the current board-approved plan. Number 2, teachers and parents want consistency. Grades 5 through 12 are currently on this schedule. Number 3, this allows us to stress test our technology system, especially considering grades K through 4 have been in all day, every day learning with their teachers. Number 4, utilizing the alternating day K-5 students is a compromise between what is best for students and what is best for staff. Number 5, this aligns with CDH guidance for in-person learning in red that we received last week. Number 6, this will allow for better ability to implementing physical distancing. Number 7, we have reached out to the following medical professionals to assist us as we move forward to make sure that we are providing all of the safety protocols possible within our schools. We'd like to thank Dr. Pate, Dr. Souza, Dr. Peterman, and Dr. Nemerson for offering to help us. This morning we had an opportunity to visit with Dr. Pate on the phone, and his offer is that those 4 medical professionals are currently evaluating our health and safety plan as well as our reopening plan. They should have that completed by next week and will be offering an evaluation report to the board. He has also offered to have weekly calls with Mr. Heller and Mrs. Garner to follow up with us on any issues that arise each week that we need medical professional advice. He has also offered to do walkthroughs to evaluate the implementation of our safety plans in each of our buildings to make sure that we are following all protocols, for example, hand sanitation, masks, and social distancing. Dr. Pate has also offered to meet with our teachers to understand better their concerns and to assist us in finding solutions in meeting those concerns. Contact tracing and the timeliness of reporting is another area we asked Dr. Pate to assist us in, and he is willing to do that along with the other doctors. The last point is to help us with creating a public data dashboard so that we can provide transparency as well as make sure that we are protecting student and staff privacy. At this point, Chairman Newhoff, that would be our main recommendation. Mr. Heller is here to help assist with any questions. Mr. DeLashman is also here if you have any questions regarding technology.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. So I'm going to need a little bit of assistance here. It's obviously a little bit unusual to do this remotely. If the trustees can kind of help out by helping it go smoothly in terms of alternating with questions and so forth. So do any trustees have any questions or comments regarding this recommendation?
I do not believe so, unless,
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Smiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a very brief comment. I believe that the resolution that we passed earlier would authorize the superintendent to do this, but I think the only reason that we would pass anything like this is just basically confirm something the board has already done.
Thank you, Trustee Smiley. Are there any other comments or questions from trustees?
Mr. Chairman, this is Trustee Ozuna.
Trustee Ozuna.
I don't have questions. I have just a few comments. First, I know that from a public perspective, for our staff and our families, there's a lot of concern about the fact that we didn't take action on Tuesday night, and for that, I truly do apologize. We didn't have the information that we needed to move ahead. I feel like we've received that over the last couple days, and we're in a better spot. I also want to acknowledge that I know that our teachers are fearful. I mean, we know that, we understand that. We need to do what we have to take all of the steps necessary to make sure that they're protected. What we also know is that we had technology problems, and we don't know what that might look like if we go fully remote. So we have to try and find a way to balance the two. So I'm going to support the plan that came in, but I'm also going to ask that from the district side that we really take the steps necessary to do as much testing as possible, because if our numbers continue to rise, we might be in a situation where we have no choice but fully remote, and we've got to be prepared for what that looks like. I would also ask the administration, I don't think this plan is ideal for a lot of reasons. I think I can live with it. I mean, we've got to do something. But I would ask that the administration look at creative ways to maybe, and I know you're doing a lot of this already. I mean, there's a lot of work being done here, but are there other things, if we stay in a hybrid situation, that might better support the education of our students and allow our teachers to feel safe? For example, should we look at every day and a half-day scenario for our elementary school kids, or for all kids? I mean, I know that there's increased busing costs, but would that have better student outcomes while still reducing the classroom size for teachers? I don't know what kind of options there might be out there, but I would encourage the administration to continue to look at those things. And if there are suggestions that you have for the board, to please bring those forward. Our families need consistency, and I understand that. And our families need time to move between our categorization. So we know that, and we need to acknowledge that. But we also need to do what's best. So if there is a plan that is better than this, please continue to work on that, and please bring that forward. I also just want to acknowledge the work that's being done with the medical experts and how much appreciation I have for that. We need to know where the gaps are. We are hearing safety concerns, and we need to talk about those and know what those are and address those right up front. Our best scenario is for all students to be in school every single day. And if we can work through these and get there, then that will be amazing. And if we can't, then we need to know why we can't and continue to work on that as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Ozuna. Are there any other trustee comments?
Mr. Chairman, this is Trustee Johnson. I have a couple questions. Thank you. And maybe Dr. Reynolds, since she had the conversation, I don't know if Mr. Heller was part of it too, with Dr. Pate, can you kind of walk us through what the stress test might look like and what the outcomes we would potentially, what's the kind of goals, what outcomes are we striving for as we stress test that? Are we, are we stress testing it for what does 30 kids in a classroom look like, or what's our stress test kind of conversation on that?
Thank you, Trustee Johnson. There are a number of stress tests we want to implement. In terms of the technology, we've already reached out to our schools to see if there are some things that we can do with our little ones. Since they have been in school every day, we want to go back to the beginning and make sure they know how to open up their iPads or laptops and log on and actually do a lesson. We're going to ask moms and dads to help us so that when the students go home at night, if there's a way that they could just log on and make sure that their devices are working. When it comes to our conversation with Dr. Pate, I would yield to Mr. Heller.
Trustees, Trustee Johnson, I guess I would say we had a pretty robust conversation today with Dr. Pate and talked about a lot of different things, and including areas where we already know there are some potential, or, well, not even potential, some gaps that we need to continue to work through. For example, things like face shields. Face shields, yes, CDH has said they do recommend face shields for certain situations, but we are seeing more and more where individuals are choosing face shields as a replacement for face masks when there isn't a true reason behind it other than maybe preference. So those are things where, as we see those, we need to work through cleaning some of that up. Face shields have a definite place for very specific reasons, but the use of a face shield as a direct replacement without an educational or medical or even behavioral purpose is going to create lack of comfort for folks who feel like, well, that's not an adequate face covering, and CDH would agree that it's not an adequate face covering in terms of doing what a face covering is meant to do. So that's one example, going out and visiting buildings and actually looking at how are we implementing physical distancing. We discussed mask breaks, and that's been obviously a recent discussion point in the news and everywhere. So what's the appropriate times where a mask break can happen? We discussed our dashboard, and we are going to ask these medical professionals to look at our dashboard and see, is it communicating what we want to communicate? Is it a good tool for our families? Is it giving the transparency, but also is it giving them the information as a parent at home that they actually need to know and want to know? We talked through everything from the smallest detail of the plan, but more important than the plan, and I think this is something trustees have said as well, is a plan is great. You can have the best plan in the world. What's the implementation of that plan? Building to building across 56 different schools. Are we implementing that with fidelity? And is the implementation actually appropriate? Is it addressing the things that we really should be addressing? We also discussed the very real situation, which is if in-person learning is going to happen in our schools, we are not going to be able to guarantee that consistent physical distancing in every situation across all of our buildings, which does mean, and we've learned this from other districts who are doing in person, that the less physical distancing you can put in place, the more students and staff are going to have to quarantine because of close contacts. And so that's something that, as a system, we have to just work through and talk through what does that look like. And so Dr. Pate offered this opportunity for Ms. Garner and myself to have a weekly phone call with him and just continue to talk through, here's the latest new issues that are coming up in our schools, and let's talk through solutions. From big picture solutions down to program specific, very individual decisions that we have to make. So very generous with his offer of his time, as were these other medical professionals. We've really just begun that relationship in kind of a more formal capacity, this opportunity to bring Dr. Pate in to visit with our teachers and hear their concerns, and then work through what are the ways we can solve those concerns. I mean, again, very generous of these folks to be willing to do this, and it's clearly something we need to do. To be honest, I would be surprised if a district our size didn't have implementation gaps, right? Anytime you implement something as large as this, there are going to be gaps in implementation. This is the opportunity for us to do those tabletop exercises with medical professionals, continue to work through those exercises, and identify the gaps, and then do that process performance improvement. In terms of a stress test, yeah, we can look at what what's it really look like when you walk into a 5th grade classroom with 32 kids in it? Let's walk into one of those classrooms with all the students there attending daily, and let's really evaluate what are the gaps, what are the dangers, what are the risks, what are the mitigating measures we might be able to put in place if that type of operational plan is still going to go forward, in order to make that as safe as possible given the limitations in the physical space. So I think that gives you maybe a little bit, but it was, I think we talked for an hour and a half today, and maybe it wasn't that long, but it was a great conversation, and we're going to have more, and I think that's the best part of this, is we have some really good plans going forward to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Follow up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Heller, that's great. That's a good summary. I'm going to pivot a little bit on, because for this motion, or this recommendation, it's really not a change for 5 through 12, but it's going to be a change for K through 4. And we've heard a number of various things about education in that lower age range. You're a teacher. Dr. Randalls is a teacher. We've got other teachers in those, and I've got a number of emails from those teachers saying, I can't teach in some of those younger grades in remote. Is there a cutoff point in the K through 5 where you think there is actually, they lose entire effectiveness in remote?
Chairman, trustees, I would say, I don't know if I could say entire effectiveness. I think it still comes down often to the practices and the ways that each individual teacher does that. But I will 100% agree that a kindergarten, a 1st grade student, even, my wife is a 2nd grade teacher, it is a challenge. Remote learning for those younger grades is a challenge. It is, it's not an ideal way to do business. I would also say that sometimes those lower grades that have higher needs in terms of teacher to student one-on-one interaction also puts that teacher in a position where they have to make, as I think I said at the last meeting, in a position to decide, are they going to stay 6 feet away from their kids all day? Or are they going to get down next to that kid and really get them where they need to get? And I've talked to a lot of teachers in the last couple of days who've emailed saying, I'm a kindergarten teacher and I want all my kids to stay in school every day. But I've also heard from teachers saying, I'm a kindergarten or a 1st grade teacher and I'm very nervous about doing in-person learning. So I think, as we all know, that's the conflict right now, is we know that there are people on both sides of this argument. When I think about education for our youngest kids, for our most vulnerable or most academically, the ones who are just building the foundation of their learning, that's my biggest concern for sure. Absolutely, I have the biggest concern. I don't know that I can say kindergartners can definitely not learn remotely. I would say the younger you are, the more of a challenge that likely is going to be for you to not only learn, but to stay engaged remotely. One of the things we want our kindergartners and 1st grade students, our younger students, to learn is not just, reading and writing and math, but we also want them to learn how to get along and learn how to be students. And those are hard things to do in isolation behind a computer screen at home. I think we know that. Trying to balance this, I think you're all in a tough position to try to make a balance between what we know our teachers are saying, or at least a lot of our teachers are saying, what we know is best for kids, which is being in the classroom with their teachers. So I'm not going to say this is the grade level where they can't learn online, but I would definitely agree that the younger the grade level, the more challenging learning remotely is going to be.
Maybe one other just general kind of timeline follow-up. When you talked to Dr. Pate, kind of when did you think going through, or did you guys talk about going through that stress test process and what kind of timeline you might be able to start to deliver some feedback or start to make some adjustments and changes to, kind of what was your timeline discussion?
Thank you, Chairman and Trustees. We didn't necessarily get too detailed on here's the exact timeline. Dr. Pate said that he felt he would have his report back to us on his evaluation of the documents we sent. He said by the end of the weekend, which means he's going to spend his weekend looking at West Ada documents, which again, very generous of him. But then I think by next week, we're hoping that by the end of next week, we're going to have a better idea from all 4 of those medical providers, those doctors, their evaluation of kind of what they've said to us. We're working, I think, to get some dates with Dr. Pate to do that meeting with the teachers as soon as possible. So those pieces are there. I think once they've had a chance to evaluate the documents we've sent them, then they can give us a report on where the gaps are, where there's areas where maybe they have questions that we could better clarify some language to help. And then I think the next step after that would be to try to identify places where we could go out and visit some school sites and say, let's see, their plan says this. We're in a yellow scenario or a red scenario. Now let's go see what it operationally actually is looking like. I mean, I think from a red scenario, if we're in red and we're doing alternating day schedule, that's when I need people to go out and see our system, because we're saying, our teachers and CDH is saying, be careful about in-person learning in red. Well, then let's go out and see what that looks like so we can see if our experts actually say, yeah, the way this is working can be effective, can minimize risk. I think those are things that we want to do as quickly as we possibly can, also being respectful of people's times and their other duties that they have, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all. I mean, I have some thoughts as well as what Trustee Ozuna said. So first of all, I also agree and feel horrible about kind of not being able to come to some alignment on Tuesday. And don't know that I mean, I agree with Trustee Ozuna, and I apologize to the board and others for surprising them. Lessons learned, right, after being here for 10 months and 8 of it being part of COVID. I'm not sure that I've got all the experiences down yet. But when I take a step back and think about what are we really trying to do, right? We've been at this for 7 or 8 months. And what was our original goal, right, as we started through this? And, I look back and I think, why did people even elect me, right? Why am I here? And it was around making sure that kids got a valuable education, and also that our teachers and staff felt safe and supported. And so I think there is a way as we go through and as we move forward that we all come together and we start to figure out, how do we move forward? We've started it. I appreciate contacting very fast those medical professionals and getting us going. I also think about what you've just kind of outlined in the stress testing and around how parents with kids in K through 4, if we make this decision tonight and this recommendation, have to pivot in one day, really one business day, to now changing their kids K through 4 without really, they have to line up daycare. If they work, they have kids who some of these kids haven't used their technology. Some of them have been using it in the classroom, but some of them really haven't used their technology in a month at home. And then I think about, the stress test. And if our ultimate goal is to get kids back in safely full time, and we know that Dr. Sousa told us this summer to do the stress test and to see that we can do it if we do it well, he believed. We have to have some kids in the building to do the stress test. So kind of where I sit is I appreciate the motion, but I kind of see a path forward where we do keep some kids in the building in the larger, or the kids are already there, and we give a little bit of time for parents to adjust and for that stress test with especially that most vulnerable population and those teachers who have to get closer, and see how do we really make that a safe room? How can we do that? And we need kids in the classroom in order to even do the test. So I think we can all come together, and I think we all have the best intent, and I would hope maybe we can all just kind of consider those thoughts as we figure out how to act in the next section.
Mr. Chairman, this is Trustee Ozuna.
Yeah, Trustee Ozuna.
Can I do a follow-up to what Trustee Johnson was just talking about? The reality is with our teachers are really concerned, and I'm sure the people in here are aware that there's a sick out planned for Monday, potentially. We can't have school without our teachers. That's just the reality that there is no school without our educators. There is no school without kids either, but we have to find a balance. So, Mr. Howell, I guess my question would be to you, given where we are, bringing in the medical experts to really be critical about our situation, and I would expect that they're going to look at this critically. That's what I hope for. Do you think that our educators would support us in a 1-week pause to allow the medical professionals to get in and look at it the way that it is today, so K through 4 in the classroom today? If we could accomplish that in that 1-week period of time, which would also give us a 1-week period of time to talk about the details of the remote Monday, which I know is because our teachers need some relief, and I know that that extra planning day is really important to them, and that would give us an opportunity to also talk about what that plan looks like. But do you think we could get support from our educators to continue for 1 week, look at that recommendation? And I guess it's not really a full week either, because we'd have to make a change at some point in time for the following week, but is that a possibility?
So Chairman and Trustees, I think anything is a possibility. If you're asking me to tell you if we can get support from all of our teachers, my answer as of this moment, standing on what I know from now, is the answer would be no. We would not be able to get all of our teachers' support. We are going to have a percentage of our teachers, and I don't know what that percentage is, who will not support that idea, and we have been told that if we are anything more than full remote on Monday, that sick out, if you will, would go forward as planned. Now, I can't speak for them. I just know that's what I've been told, and I can tell you the numbers and what we had as far as how many absences are already in the books for Monday, and it's significant. And it's to the point where it's more than we're going to be able to cover with subs as of right now. So I can't speak for whether they would support that or not. I know that I've heard from some who definitely would. I've heard from many elementary teachers I'm not going to say many. I've heard from some elementary teachers since the last board meeting that would support staying with a everyday model. But I've also heard from some who don't feel comfortable with it and feel like they need to maybe do this type of work action that they're talking about as a way to demonstrate how they feel about the situation.
Mr. Chairman, this is Trustee Johnson for a follow-up. Sorry, I should.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. And this might be for Mr. Heller or might be for Dr. Rannells. You kind of alluded to some folks have already asked for a sick day on Monday or said they need one. Do you have some data around the breakout between elementary and secondary, or even what you have today?
I don't know if I know that we got a report from the person who coordinates our sub placement. I know it is broken out, I believe, even by building, so we can see building by building what those are. So I didn't do an analysis to bring that forward for anybody. So I mean, I could certainly go and look and see if I could give you a rough idea. As of last look, I think we had over 700 absences for Monday, and 550 of them were unfilled. So.
Mr. Chairman, it would be really helpful to have that data, and the reason I asked that question is because when we've had our emails come in and when we've looked at the survey data, the elementary population has been significantly more open because of the challenges of teaching in a remote environment, I believe, not because they feel safe. So it would be really helpful to have that data before we get to the action section.
I can certainly try to look that up and give you a report here. Just give me a little bit of time while you guys discuss further. Okay.
Are there any other trustee questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Smiley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of things. Number one, I really appreciate a lot of what Trustee Ozuna had to say. I think she hit a lot of the issues very succinctly. I have three concerns. One, the teachers, many of the teachers their workload has exponentially increased because juggling in-person, remote, having to do those lessons that will keep those students occupied and busy and learning on those remote days, in addition to the pressure of having a smaller class, but still a class that needs attention on those other days, that's been extremely stressful and hard for those teachers to handle, right? You know, I said in the last meeting I wouldn't mind if we had enough money in the budget to use some of that CARES Act money to make sure that our teachers are compensated for all the extra hours they've had to put in. I would have no objection to that at all. The second is, I really agree that our youngest children, the benefit of being in class every day is substantial. And if there was some way that we could figure out how to tap on the brakes and just say we aren't moving forward with the 4th and 5th graders, you know, I would be happy with that alternative as well. And finally, my concern is with the timeline. I noticed when I was pulling up the paper online this morning, our governor was saying a lot of whether we get out of this category red is whether people actually cooperate with the social distancing, the mask wearing, and these other things. That would be very, very helpful. And we have to pull together on that, because the one thing I don't want is I would like to get this timeline accelerated and get kids back in class as soon as we safely can. And we're moving the wrong direction. So with that, I want to see us get our kids in school, in class as soon as we can, but it's going to take everybody, the entire community, to get those numbers down.
Chairman
Are there any
Newhoff.
other trustee questions or comments?
Chairman Newhoff, we have 3 patrons who would like to provide testimony to the board.
All right. For that portion, I think it's going to be easier if I'm going to ask Trustee Azuna if she would sort of facilitate that part of the meeting, because I think it's going to be easier than reading a name to me and so forth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we'll move ahead and do this and while we wait for Mr. Heller to look up his data. The first one on the list is Eric Teese, please. And Mr. Teese, and for everybody else that's testifying today, if you wouldn't mind just stating your name.
Absolutely. My name's
Okay,
Eric
thank you.
Thies, Chairman, Trustees, and Dr. Reynolds. My name's Eric Thies. I'm the president of the West Ada Education Association. And I know we're not popular with some parents, as is evident, but I also know that our primary concern is the health and safety of staff and students, as it should be as a public education entity. And what I know and what you were told today is that in red, we cannot, in an alternating schedule, we cannot physically distance. And in our plan that we currently have, it says we will physically distance. And in the recommendations from the CDH and the CDC and the World Health Organization, and I believe the federal government, and the list goes on, but in all of those recommendations, it says that if we're going to continue to teach in our classrooms, the only safe way to do it, while there's severe spread within our community, is to do it with physically distancing. And we can't. It's not that teachers don't want to. It's not that nobody wants it to happen. It's that we physically can't. We have too many kids in not enough classrooms. We cannot physically distance, which means we cannot follow the safety recommendations. There was a question that was asked earlier, will teachers be permissive of a 1-week delay? No, we should have fixed these issues already. And now that cases are climbing through our district, within our schools and within our community, it's time to actually do something that increases the safety in our classroom, that doesn't increase the risk. And what you're asking is for teachers to do nothing to protect themselves and their students. during this very difficult time. There is not a teacher in this district that doesn't love their job and love their students. And it hurts me to say that if we are not remote on Monday, we are not going into our buildings. It hurts me to say that, and I don't say it on behalf of my members. I say it on behalf of the 700 teachers who have the guts to stand up to their principals and to parents and to protect children, because other people won't. It's not safe in our schools. That needs to be addressed. If that's not addressed, I don't know what team we're playing on. Thank you.
Next, Kelly Reed Heller.
Okay, let me get my introduction to you guys properly done this time. I'm Kelly Reed Hoyer. I'm at Rocky Mountain High School. I would like to make a correction on the record. I miscounted on my roster. I have 18 kids in my portable. That is not much larger than the size of a medium living room. It does not negate the point that I cannot distance my students. I cannot. I can't speak for elementary. I cannot speak for middle school, but I can tell you what it's like in the high schools. Our kids go out for lunch. Their masks come off. They're making out. They're standing extremely close to each other. They're getting in cars together without their masks on and going away. As much as we try to distance them, to keep them separated so that they can be safe, it is not possible. We don't have control over them the entire time they are at school. They are in passing periods. They are at lunch. They go to the bathroom. In our classrooms, we are constantly saying, yes, thank you for wearing a mask. Now, would you please pull it over your nose? Or, yes, I see your mask on, but it's not doing you any good wrapped around your chin. Pull it up. We have to tell them constantly to sanitize things, including their own hands. This is what it is like for us day in and day out, in addition to planning for every one lesson we teach, planning 2. You're focusing on elementary and middle. And again, I don't know what it's like there. You are not listening to what it is like in the high schools. Even if in our classrooms we could keep them separate, which we can't, we cannot keep them separate when they are on their breaks. It is an impossibility. And what you are asking us to do, quite frankly, you guys are all spaced 6 feet apart. You all have your masks on. You're making sure that everybody around you is safe, but you are asking us to go into a place where that is not a concern of 90% of the people we work with. They don't believe this is real, or because they are teenagers, they believe that they are immortal. And you are asking us, you seriously think that it's okay to ask us to put ourselves and other children at risk? I have a teacher in my building who has not seen her son since we went into this hybrid mode because her son has extreme health issues. He had to go live with her mother so that she could continue to work and provide for him. This is not a safe thing. This is not okay. We have another teacher whose son has had to be homeschooled when he would rather be in the building because this is not a safe place. I am begging you to please take all of this into consideration.
Thank you for
We
your
certainly are.
testimony. We've run out of time. Thank you. Mr. David Phillips, please.
Thank you, trustees and Superintendent Reynolds. So I'm this parent that has to work this full-time job. I'm this parent who has a spouse who is one of these high school teachers. And my concerns, my reality does not matter. My kid's education does not matter. This is what we are hearing from you guys. You guys are the leaders. Ed, I'm finally glad you started responding to me, but too little too late. Amy, you should never have to pre-approve your motions with your board. That is in direct violation of open meeting laws. Don't let them taint you. The teachers that were worried, they were given multiple opportunities to teach remote learning. They refused if they're sitting back here complaining. The students who were worried, the parents who were worried about their kids, were given an opportunity to enroll before the school year started. Some of them refused, now they're complaining. You have 700 teachers that are planning on being sick on Monday. I say we need 700 doctor's notes. And if they don't provide doctor's notes, there should be consequences. When did we stop giving consequences for adults not doing what they're supposed to do? This is insanity. You want to know why her kids don't wear her mask? Because she's not following the rules. She just stood up here and told you, if you don't do what I want, I'm not going to show up. That's what her kids are doing when they put the mask on their chin. That's what her kids are doing when they don't cover their nose. Kids don't listen to what we say. They watch what we do. This union is not even allowed to be a part of the bargaining process unless you invite them. Stop giving them so much control. This is not California. This is not New York. This is not Chicago. This is Idaho, for God's sake. My wife has students, because you guys have moved us into this quarter system and because she doesn't see all of her kids this quarter, are failing half their classes. That is unacceptable. High school students failing their classes. My daughter, a very high-achieving middle schooler, comes home and I see on her Power School, missing, F, 1 grade, missing, takes her from an A to a C. The teachers are putting stuff in wrong. Mr. Heller could care less about us. Dave Mosier has given me a couple phone calls, but that's it. He doesn't care. He wants to put me off on the overworked teachers, and he wants to put me off on the principals that won't return phone calls. Finally, on this whole extra planning, I know you guys have gotten an email from at least one teacher who's also a parent who has told you, I'm not going to get any extra planning. What I'm going to get is more training and more responsibilities from my principal. I'm not going to plan. Stop listening to this. I know I'm over it, and I'm going to stop. Stop. This is ridiculous. Don't let these people control all of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Chairman, that's everybody that has signed up. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Ozuna, and thank you for to the 3 people who shared their testimony here. I had a couple of questions for administration. The proposal from Tuesday night included a different scenario if the caseload in Ada County got higher to 35 per 100K. If we got to that, what would be your recommendation?
Mr. Chairman and trustees, I will say, obviously at this point, we're not bringing forward that change that we had brought forward on Tuesday. We felt like it was best for us to bring that forward on the 27th where you guys had the adequate time. Clearly, we didn't give you the time we needed to, and I apologized then, and I apologize again now. One of the things I would say, and I think as we talked to Dr. Pate today, is anything we do at this point, we need to live with the fact that there's going to be a need to constantly be paying attention to what's going on both in our buildings and in the community and doing what we would, and Dr. Pate I think had used the idea of it every 2 weeks. We need to be evaluating is what we're doing now still going to work based on what we know is happening in our community? And so that would be my, I think, interim recommendation is between now and the 27th board meeting where we can bring maybe a different plan forward, is that we are just all really clear on paying attention to the metrics that are happening. That work that we're doing on the dashboard, as we're getting closer to that being something that we can actually push out for everybody, is going to help, I think, everyone feel a little bit better in terms of a better decision-making process that both looks at case counts in the community, but also case counts and other metrics within each individual building. So I think all those things combined. So at this moment, what I would say is, yeah, we need to keep really close eye every single week on Monday to see what the cases per 100,000 are for Ada County and for West Ada. And if there is a point where we reach a higher threshold and we don't feel comfortable, we're obviously going to need to bring that back. I would also say that CDH is going to be really clear to us if they feel like what we are doing and the new level of community spread puts us in a position where what we're doing is now even a greater problem, then we're going to have to come back to you. So I do think that there's a good place for us to get to where we can say a very defined metric in which we would use the alternating day versus a remote learning situation. But I would think in the next 2 weeks, we just need to be really paying attention to those case counts as they move forward and having those conversations. And if there's a feeling in our collaboration with CDH that we need to move fully into remote based on that, we need to bring the board into that to quickly make that transition.
Thank you, Mr. Heller. We have a level of hierarchy where there's the regional directors oversee portions of schools. Has that been used to go and address or at least understand school by school what the realities are in terms of distancing and compliance with things like mask wearing and so forth?
Chairman and trustees, I'll speak to that, but I would also invite if any of the region directors wanted to speak to it. When circumstances or concerns are brought forward in kind of the appropriate chain of command way of doing things, and the region directors are brought into those concerns, then yes, they are hearing those concerns. They're talking to patrons, they're talking to teachers, they're trying their best to do that. I think we can continue to do that work as we start doing this shock testing and going out and doing spot checks in our buildings. I think it's appropriate the region director is one of the members that goes out for that spot check, so they are seeing the schools that they oversee and making sure they can speak to those. So, but yeah, they are involved in those conversations as concerns come up. If we get a report that there's a school that's not maybe implementing their procedures or their mitigating measures appropriately, then the region directors are doing those investigations, making phone calls, doing some of that. Often, I think our region directors often at times get skipped over in the process, and so we do want to make sure that process continues where those concerns do go to the building principal, or if it's a concern, I think as I said last meeting, if their concern is a parent doesn't feel that the education in the classroom is where it should be, well, that conversation should start with that classroom teacher and then move to the principal and to the region director. So yes, that structure is in place. We try to use that structure as much as we can to do that performance improvement and identify areas where we need to improve. I know our directors meet with their principals via Teams weekly, if not more than once a week. They were on with them today going over some upcoming things. If we're in remote on Monday, here's some things for you to be working on with your elementary kids today and tomorrow to make sure they're ready for Monday. So that work is constantly happening. Our directors are very plugged into what's happening in their buildings. But even with most of our region directors would have 14 or 15 buildings, which is bigger than most districts in the state of Idaho. And so they are plenty busy with the number of emails and phone calls that they're working through. Hopefully I answered that question for you.
Yeah, you did, and I do appreciate the workload that the regional directors have. But I guess what I gathered out of that is that we don't have a universal sort of audit system in place to sit and look at to see what's actually going on in each of the buildings.
I don't know that we have what I would say universal audit system, but I think that is something that we agree having a way to do that is important, and I think that's part of even what we've been talking with internally as we talk to these medical health providers, these physicians, what would be a good process for us to go through internally to check those buildings. And I know Dr. Reynolds has been trying to get out and visit buildings. Our directors are trying to do that. So that's something that I think we can certainly look into, is how do we build in a process for the regional directors to constantly do that quality check and be working with their principals. So I think it's a suggestion we can certainly take back to our executive team and the COVID task force.
Mr. Chair, I know Mr. Heller offered this, but would it be possible to actually hear from the regional directors what they are seeing when they've been out in the schools?
Yep, Mr. Mosier will come up. While he's coming up, I'll just give you of the 728 current absences that are in for Monday, 550 are unfilled. 220 of those are middle school unfilled absences. 150 are high school, and 180 are elementary school. So as you can see, it's fairly evenly dispersed across all three levels of our system.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, we see a lot of what you've heard today and on Tuesday from teachers and as well as others. There is a lot of compliance that happens at the schools. I would say that situations that are presented to us concerning situations it's more about the instruction than what it is about appropriate PPE and what's going on there. So we do have situations where I was at Meridian High School, for example, and walking down the hallway, and yes, what you've heard from some of the teachers is accurate, where they are constantly managing the behavior. And that's something that we've talked quite a bit about, is that behavior management and modifications that are having to be made. It happens everywhere. So I think you have a decent picture of what happens. I think what the chairman indicated as far as any universal audit or anything like that, we haven't gone down that road yet, so I think that'll be something that we'll be able to do in the future. So are there concerns? Sure. Is there areas of improvement? Yes. Our nursing supervisor, one of the things that she's been talking about recently is some performance improvement. And certainly we have the ability to do that. And we will continue to do that. So there's challenges all over. And so we will look for ways to improve and help our buildings where we can. So if there's something specific you want to ask, I'd be happy to address that.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't have anything. I just wanted to hear kind of because I think Trustee Ozuna alluded to this the other day, we're hearing kind of regional differences, so I wanted to hear from the regional directors kind of what they were seeing.
Okay.
The things I'm noticing in the South region are a complete change of practice from less than a year ago. What I see are teachers who are standing at the door when the kids come in, having them sanitize their hands. I'm seeing teachers wear masks who never wore masks before. I see them constantly going around the desks, spraying them to make sure they're disinfected. I see them talk to the students of make sure your mask covers your nose. And while they're doing those things, they're also instructing. So they're talking about math, they're talking about reading, they're talking about their subject area, and they are working very hard. When you talk about teachers working hard, think 2 lesson plans, a remote lesson plan and a lesson plan that is live. So I hear from teacher over and over again, we're working harder than we ever have. And they are, because they're double planning. But I also see students who are happy to be in school. They are thrilled to see friends. They're happy to be on the playground. They want to be in school. The behavior as far as students acting inappropriately, as far as behaviors not counting the pulling up of the mask, which I do myself, but the discipline behaviors are completely gone. They want to be in school. So I see positive things with teachers, I see positive things with students, and I see administrators that are really keeping up with everything, doing professional development, wanting to do the best they can every day. And I've been in elementary, middle, and high schools.
Mr. Chairman, trustees, Dr. Reynolds. Well, to say that I've been in every classroom in all 13 of my schools, I mean, it's not possible. So this is just anecdotal, what I have observed, probably the 3 visits that I've had to date in every school. So at a glance, I see people in compliance. I see administrators working really hard, trying to make sure that everybody is safe. We have our weekly meetings remotely, and I can just tell you, this is a huge concern. This is what our principals pretty much deal with. This is all they deal with. I'd like to say it's all teaching and learning, but it's making sure that all of the safety procedures are being followed. And to say, is it 100% everywhere? Absolutely not. I can drive down the road by any high school, Eagle High School being mine, on the way. There are times when, let's face it, kids are just out of your supervision. They're leaving campus for lunch. Yeah, most kids are not wearing their masks when they leave campus to go get their lunch. That's just the reality. But I can tell you it is on the forefront. I know that our principals have done a really good job working with our families that have not been cooperative with the measures we've put in place, and they've done an extraordinary job of navigating that. We've had families either do a turnaround and they're complying, or they have left. We don't want them to leave, but in some cases that's what they've done. But I'll just reiterate what Mr. Moser said. There's always room for improvement. As far as an audit, absolutely, we're all in favor of that. There's just a lot of bodies, a lot of people. But it's, again, I think where we were in March to now, it's certainly taken seriously, I think, overall. But it is, that is what we deal with. That is what I deal with almost every day. Talking with principals, how to deal with this situation. It always comes back to procedures in the classroom and the hallways, and how can we be, consistent. So, any other questions for me? Okay.
Chairman, trustees, Dr. Reynolds. In the East region, I am going to reiterate the same things my colleagues said. I see compliance and support. I see proactive teaching of the steps aligned in the health and safety plans. I see students wearing masks. I see staff wearing masks. I see much fewer wearing face shields, and those are mostly specific to programs or areas of need. I see rooms that are proactively arranged to support distancing, and then I also see non-instructional areas that are arranged similarly, such as the cafeteria and hallways. Daily, there are improvements in both the health and safety plan implementations and instructional effectiveness, because our school leaders and our teachers and staff want to do best by kids, and so they collaborate and share those strategies back and forth. And it's often that you'll see one effective strategy that's been implemented at for example, like Hazel Middle School, where Dr. White and I were able to visit, then being implemented among their principal PLCs and structured at other schools as well. I see and respond to isolated incidences and needs that come up. They're not patterns of behavior that would render health and safety plans ineffective. They're isolated incidences where we respond to a parent concern, respond to a student behavior, a student concern, and of those incidences, very few are unresolved, or very few result in a circumstance that we feel what wasn't resolved best by both parties and what is good for kids and good for learning. So those are the patterns I see in the East region, similar to my colleagues. So, any questions? All right, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all for that. I mean, we've got, it'd be nice if we were where we're at with reaching out to the medical experts, had been there a couple months ago, obviously, and I want to point out that not only are we going to get their observations in some of the schools, but I understand that CDH is also going to do the same effort. The trick of that is that the kids have to be there to do it. And, that's going to require a situation where we're at least operating on an every other day schedule. And so at the same time, stress testing the computer system is going to require them being remote. It's kind of a difficult conundrum here where you've got a cart with two horses and both horses are behind the cart right now, it kind of seems like. But that's all I have to say. Are there any other trustee comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, maybe just one other thing. Ms. Garner put up some metrics in front of us this week around what our cases per 100,000 count were in the schools. I don't know if Troy has those and could just pull them back up. I don't have my computer today and wanted to be able to see where our cases per 100,000 were for our different grade levels in our schools. I couldn't remember what the data was. The metric dashboard that Ms. Garner and Ms. Jackson presented. Yeah. I can't remember if it was linked to the agenda or not. Thank you. Maybe, Mr. Chair, just for information for you and Mr. Smiley, elementary was 8 cases per 100,000, middle school is 12.59 per 100,000, and high school is 9.22 per 100,000 in the current West Ada data.
Trustee Johnson, could you repeat that and speak a little louder into the microphone better?
Yeah, sorry. Elementary data shows cases per 100,000 of 8.04. Middle school is 12.59, and high school is 9.22. And the total district-wide cases per 100,000 is 9.54.
Thank you. Are there any other trustee questions or comments? Well, seeing none, then we're going to move on to the action item D, and there's one action item to determine the operational status well in the red category, and I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, this is Trustee Ozuna.
Trustee Ozuna?
Before I make my motion, I just want to say that I do hope that our staff can see that the actions that we are taking, we are listening to your concerns, we are hearing you, we are taking steps to make sure that our safety protocols are working and they're being addressed. That said, we also don't know that our technology will support all of our students being 100% remote. To find a balance between those two, my motion tonight is that we move ahead, effective on Monday, with the alternating day schedule for elementary, middle, and high school, which will keep which will keep middle school and high school on the same schedule they're on, but move elementary to an alternating day schedule. Mr. Chairman, that's my motion.
Thank you, Trustee Ozuna. Was the motion clear to the clerk?
Ms. Jackson, the motion is to move ahead with the alternating calendar effective on Monday for elementary, middle, and high school.
Chairman, Trustees, it's clear.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I second that.
Is there any discussion? Well, hearing none, I assume that's right, I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
How many ayes did I get there?
2, Mr. Chairman.
Who were they?
Mr. Chairman, you got 2.
Yeah, who were the, was it trustee Klopfenstein, trustee Azuna?
Yes, correct.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And trustee Newhoff is an aye. Are there any nays?
This is trustee Johnson.
Did I hear a nay?
This is trustee Johnson. I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Any abstentions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm abstaining.
Thank you. So the motion carries 3-1 with 1 abstention. That moves us to adjournment. I entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, trustee Johnson. I believe for the motion, is there a second?
A second.
Second.
I think I heard trustee Klopfenstein first. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned. Thank you all.